In March of 2002, I was a freshman in college, and it was starting to become apparent that the freshman 15 was probably going to be a thing for me. So I started going to the gym more than I ever had in my entire life, and to reward myself, I bought some cute new gym clothes. They were not super breathable in the downtown area, and so not long after my foray into fitness, I ended up at the college infirmary with what I thought was a run-of-the-mill UTI or yeast infection. They ran some tests, they came back. It was neither of those things. I had my first and only sexually transmitted disease. And it was not one of the scary ones, not ones that stay with you for life, just the strong hit of antibiotics and move on. So I took my strong hit of antibiotics, and before I could move on, the doctor sat me down and said, "It is imperative that you tell all of your sexual partners from the last 8 months because they either infected you or you might have infected them." And I'm 18 and a stringent rule follower, and it did not even occur to me that I could just not do that. So I am not promiscuous now. I was not then, but this particular 8 months kind of spanned this weird point in my life where I'd broken up with a high school boyfriend, I'd had a summer romance, and I now had a college boyfriend. So there were 3 people I had to get in contact with, kind of a weird STD Mamma Mia moment. So the first guy was my high school boyfriend. He and I had been friends forever. Before we dated, we were super comfortable together. I called him. It was no big deal. The second guy, summer romance guy, had kind of wanted to be more than just summer romance guy, and I ditched him for college boyfriend guy. So that conversation was a little dicey, but we got through it. And but my college boyfriend, Mark, was going to be completely impossible to tell. And not because I was embarrassed or worried about his reaction, but because he was currently deployed in Kuwait with the U.S. Army. And we had met about 2 weeks into my freshman year at this really cheesy nightclub called the N Club in Greensboro, North Carolina, and we'd kind of made eyes across the and we'd fallen madly in love. And so 3 months later, when he said he was being deployed, I did what any rational teenager does, and I professed my undying love, told him I would wait forever, and I would write to him every day. And I'd written to him every day since he'd been gone, but because he was part of the 82nd Airborne's kind of initiative on the ground to set up infrastructure for what at the time was a potentially impending war, there was no infrastructure there. So there was no mail, there was no internet, there was no phone, there was no nothing. And so he'd been gone about a month, but I had not received a single call or letter. And so I didn't know how to get in touch with him quickly. So I did some research, and I found out that the Red Cross will contact a service member overseas on behalf of a family member, which I was not. We were not married. I was not family. So I had to call his mom. And, yeah. And luckily, she and I had kind of developed a little bit of a rapport at this point. It was before texting. He'd given me her phone number when he deployed, and we had been kind of talking every few days of did you see what President Bush said? Do you think this is going to be a war? Will he go to combat? We kind of had this trauma bond going. And I had 2 serious boyfriends in high school, and both of their mothers hated me, which I honestly don't blame them for. My own mother barely liked me in high school, and for a good reason, I was a shit. But I was really trying with Mark's mom. I was really trying to make it a good kind of relationship, and I really wanted her to like me, and it was going well. So I did not want to call her and have the conversation that included the phrases, either Mark gave me chlamydia or I gave Mark chlamydia. It was just not something I wanted to do, but I made the phone call, and I remember it was March. It was freezing cold, and I was standing outside my dorm, and I was in a sweatshirt, but by the time the call was over, I was completely drenched in sweat, all the way through the sweatshirt. But to her credit, she was wonderful. She totally understood. She contacted the Red Cross. They contacted Mark in Kuwait, and he got his hit of antibiotics. And we stayed together for that entire deployment. I wrote him every day for a year. We stayed together through another deployment to Afghanistan. We eventually broke up, but I learned a valuable lesson from that relationship, which is making your boyfriend's mom like you is very important. And I was struggling with an ending for the story, and I was out with my friends last night, and I maybe had one too many margaritas, and I said to the waitress, how would you end a story about chlamydia? And she said, with 2 pills.